Okay, so we know what a UTXO is in theory, but to truly master Bitcoin, you've got to understand how these digital coins actually live, move, and eventually die on the network. Welcome back to this Explainer by Forge College. Today, we're building on our very last lesson to track the fascinating and honestly pretty wild life cycle of a UTXO. So let's just dive right in. To make sense of the abstract blockchain and all of its heavy technical jargon, let's kind of flip our perspective for a second. What if we visualize the entire Bitcoin network not as some complex web of code, but as a giant, bustling global post office? Imagine just endless, highly organized shelves spanning the world, holding millions of secure items. Keep that mental model in your head because it's absolutely going to make everything click today. And that brings us to our core concept. A UTXO, which remember stands for an unspent transaction output, is basically a securely sealed envelope resting on one of those massive global shelves. It's got a fixed amount of value locked inside and a very specific label naming exactly who is allowed to open it. It just sits there, unspent, patiently waiting until someone with the right cryptographic key comes along to rip it open. And here's the kicker. You can't alter it, and you definitely can't just tear off a corner to take a little bit out. It is completely all or nothing. Let's make this super real with a quick case study. Meet Alice. Now, Alice wants to send exactly 0.90 Bitcoin to her friend Bob. It sounds like a simple everyday transaction, right? But the mechanics happening under the hood are actually pretty incredible. See, when Alice opens her digital wallet, she doesn't see a single neat account balance of, say, 1.8 Bitcoin, like you would in a regular banking app. Instead, her wallet sees three separate, confirmed UTXOs. Going right back to our post office analogy, she actually has three distinct, sealed envelopes sitting on her shelf. One holds 0.30, one holds 0.50, and one holds exactly 1.00 Bitcoin. So, to build this transaction, her wallet kicks in and does some rapid-fire math behind the scenes. Step 1 is evaluating the inputs to cover Bob's 0.90 Bitcoin payment, plus a little extra to, tip the postman, our minor fee. Step 2, her wallet automatically grabs that single 1.00 Bitcoin envelope. Why that one? Because it's just the cleanest option. It covers the entire bill in one go without needing to awkwardly tape multiple smaller envelopes together. If we break down the exact math on this, it looks a little something like this. The input is her 100 Bitcoin envelope. The payment to Bob is 0.90. The miner takes a tiny 0.0006 Bitcoin fee for their hard work verifying the transfer. Do this simple subtraction there, and we can clearly see there is exactly 0.0994 Bitcoin left over. Which naturally brings up a really important practical question. Where the heck does that leftover Bitcoin go? Remember our golden rule from earlier? Alice had to hand over her entire 1.00 Bitcoin envelope to the post office clerk. She can't just take her change out and keep the rest of the envelope. That original envelope has to be destroyed. So are her leftover funds just lost to the void? Thankfully, no way. The network actually has an incredibly elegant solution for this, and it's called a change output. Just picture the post office clerk taking that leftover value, sealing it up tightly into a brand new envelope, slapping Alice's digital signature right on the front, and handing it back to her as exact change. She put one envelope in, and the system literally mints a totally new one just for her leftover funds. As we often emphasize in our learning programs at Forge College, understanding this full chronological timeline, from creation to consumption, is absolutely crucial to mastering transaction design. This life cycle isn't just some fun piece of trivia. It quite literally dictates how the entire network breathes. A UTXO moves from created to unspent confirmed, waits in the mempool, and is ultimately consumed. So let's break these specific stages down.
All right, so stages 1 and 2 are output creation and unspent confirmed. An envelope is officially created when a miner physically stamps it into a confirmed block on the ledger. Once that happens, it enters the unspent confirmed stage. All this means is that it's valid, it's real, and it's resting safely and patiently on the blockchain shelf until Alice decides she needs it. Honestly, it could sit there for a minute or for 10 whole years.
Then comes stage 3. When Alice finally taps send on her wallet app, her transaction enters what we call the mempool. The mempool is honestly exactly like anxiously waiting in line at the post office. Her original envelope is temporarily locked up. Everyone on the network can see she's trying to spend it, but the transaction isn't official yet, not until a miner finally stamps it into a new block. And finally, stage 4, consumption. Once that transaction gets stamped and confirmed, that original 1.00 Bitcoin envelope is completely destroyed. It gets ripped open, its contents are emptied out, and it is permanently wiped from the active UTXO ledger.
It is gone forever. Never, ever to be spent again. But hey, the value doesn't just disappear. In its place, exactly 2 brand new UTXOs are born right out of thin air to replace it. One envelope goes to Bob for his payment, and the other is Alice's brand new change envelope. This right here is the heartbeat of the network. One old envelope was consumed and 2 new ones were created. The fundamental state of the ledger has completely changed. But this constant churning and replacing leads to a very real and honestly very annoying problem for everyday users. Think about it. What happens if Alice buys, say, 100 cups of coffee over the course of a year, making hundreds of small payments? Because of those change outputs, she's going to get hundreds of tiny fractional change envelopes back. Her pristine digital shelf is going to become an absolute cluttered mess. If she's not careful, she'll end up with what the network officially calls dust. Dust refers to envelopes so incredibly tiny that the post office actually charges more in processing fees to send them than the actual Bitcoin inside is even worth. It's literally like lugging a giant jar of pennies into the bank, only for the teller to charge you a $20 fee just to deposit them. Those UTXOs just become economically unspendable.
So Alice is left facing a pretty massive dilemma here. On one hand, she has fragmentation, keeping all those tiny UTXOs. But that totally inflates her future fees because she has to carry a massive armful of envelopes just to pay for one larger item later. On the other hand, she has consolidation, taking all those tiny envelopes to the clerk and swapping them out for one big bill. But doing that links all her past separate transactions together, severely damaging her privacy by basically revealing her entire financial history to anyone who's watching.
To summarize our explainer today, every single spend on the network destroys old UTXOs and creates new ones. Because of this continuous, never-ending cycle of destruction and creation, UTXO management isn't just fun network trivia, it's a really delicate, high-stakes balancing act between optimizing your fees and preserving your personal privacy. And you know, that delicate balance perfectly sets the stage for our very next lesson, transaction inputs and outputs, where we'll actually look under the hood to see how these envelopes are built on a code level. You can find that lesson alongside a ton of other amazing Web3 resources and deep dives by visiting forge.college. But before you go, I want to leave you with a question to kind of chew on. What specific cryptographic mechanisms act as the hidden locks and keys for all these envelopes we've been talking about today? And how will different address formats mathematically change the cost of your future transactions? Think about that one. And I will see you in the next explainer.